Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Joe McHugh, your independent candidate for President of the United States, and I'm going to connect the dots on a few things today. You may say that this is a little bit of a reach, but you know what? We're going to have a little bit of fun, and I'm also going to share with you some of my favorite resources on YouTube as well. So just to give you a little bit of a background perspective, as many of you know, I grew up in Detroit, and this is a compilation of the Lions getting cheated by pretty much everybody. And you can see he's clearly down, and the referees did not blow the whistle, and then they ended up giving him this touchdown. Later on in this compilation, you'll see that Calvin Johnson was robbed of a touchdown against the Chicago Bears as well. The point of that is that, growing up in Detroit as a Lions fan, you learn very quickly that things are not as they seem and that the man really is out to cheat you. Now, when I grew up, in sixth grade, I watched a movie called What is the Secret of Soylent, or rather, the movie was called Soylent Green. And the whole concept of the whole movie was about what is the secret of Soylent Green. It was set in 2022. We did. Some things Now, Soylent Green is the food supply that is made available through the public, through the government at that point, because society had collapsed, the food supply had collapsed. And this is extremely concerning. It's just a movie, sure, but here's some irony. It was produced and made in 1973, which is the same year that we left the gold standard. Same year that we got into fiat money. It's also the same year that wages in America for non-supervisory employees stopped growing. Now, bear with me for a moment here, because this is a guy named Jimmy. Okay, and Jimmy is a former soldier. He's a kind of a forensics investigator. He likes to connect the dots in a lot of things, and he's come up with proof that shows that there is a lost global civilization that spans the entire planet. I highly recommend you watch this video. It'll open your eyes. Basically, he shows that there are pyramids on every continent, including Antarctica, actually, and that if you put those pyramids side by side, you'll realize that they're very similar. Just as if you put skyscrapers, which are now on pretty much every continent, you see that they're also very similar, and both lead to the idea and more or less a proof that there was an ancient global civilization that spanned the entire planet. Now, I bring this up because there's another one, suspiciousobservers.net talks about, or .org rather, and Ben over at Suspicious Observers talks about the linkage of the sun and how it's driving climate change. And I personally believe that there must be some form of influence from our human behavior as well, but it appears, according to the math that's not being covered by mainstream science, that the sun is really what's driving the majority of this. But that doesn't absolve us from doing the right thing and ensuring that we eliminate pollution. Now, when you combine climate change to something else, which Christian over at Ice Age Farmers likes to talk about, he's been talking about how the world food supply has been collapsing. And if you follow any of the, I guess you could call it conspiracy threads out there, that the vast majority of farming in the world is no longer it's no longer heirloom seeds. In other words, you have to buy the seeds from Monsanto, which was now owned by DuPont. And so that means we're dependent upon corporations for the supply of our food. And, as a logistics officer in the Marine Corps, I look at things through the perspective of how things are connected. And my background is also in finance and economics. So everything relates back to how things are connected. Now, Christian covers how their supply chain is breaking, and as a result of the coronavirus. Now, if you use the coronavirus to shut down global logistics, and you connect that with a shortening food growth cycle as a result of the sun, and you connect the dots on things, you could end up with a Soylent Green type of scenario, and that is what is extremely concerning. So, if you want to look into more of these things on your own, go ahead and go to YouTube and type in Jimmy from Bright Insight, or Suspicious Observers, and you'll find Ben and Suspicious Observers, and you'll also find Christian if you do a search for Ice Age Farmer. Now, I mentioned these three specifically because, again, we seem to be going into an era in which the Trump tariff strategy of separating economies, the American economy from the rest of the world, has actually been more effectively accomplished through the coronavirus than was with the tariffs. I also talk a little bit about Bitcoin. In a second here. Okay, we're back. So I wanted to find some information. Now, the World Health Organization has recently warned, or rumored to have warned, against the use of paper currency, saying that the coronavirus may be on the banknotes and that they're encouraging you to use electronic transactions. Now, I have not been able to find where they actually said this. However, it is out there, and it's in the crypto world that, the WHO warns against using paper currency and whether or not this is a boom for crypto. Now, if you take that and you add that to the fact that the IRS says crypto is currency, you may be inclined to believe that we might be moving towards a post-dollar crypto world. And indeed, I believe that is currently where we are headed. I wrote in Hijacking America Part 2, which is an article series on medium.com/@joe.mchugh, MCHUGH. So Bitcoin is a hijacked currency. It's created by the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, in my opinion. I'll show you the proof. Give me a sec. Okay, and so as I mentioned in the moment ago, I wrote an article, Hijacking America Part 2, that describes how the U.S. government is using Bitcoin to transition the world to a totalitarian state. And that it's through Bitcoin. And as a matter of fact, terrorists can hack Bitcoin, and those terrorists are American. So here's the way it worked: is that they in 2010 it was a rewrite of the blockchain, and I document everything in this article. Well, this is the theory behind it, but here's what rewrote the blockchain in 2010. And here's the reference. You can go ahead and take a look at it. And then this is actually, the actual secret of everything how it's explained, is that there really are a lot more than 21 million Bitcoin. There's actually 184 billion Bitcoin, which means that the total cap is closer to $9 quadrillion, and that the 21 million float is really just 0.01% of the total float. So when the entire blockchain is controlled in the hands of just a few people, you've got the makings of a totalitarian state. And so this is important because when you can add in Bitcoin and the coronavirus and climate change and a collapsing food supply all at the same time, and you look at things through the eyes of Jimmy and you want to connect the dots and see what's the proof is actually really in front of you, you end up with the possibility that we could end up with a collapse of the global economy in just the next 2 years, in which the American public and people around the world are dependent upon corporations and governments for our most basic rights of food and water. This is Joe McHugh, and I'm with Liberty Strikes Back, and your independent candidate for President of the United States, because I believe that we have a basic right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And those basic rights are derived from the laws of nature and nature's God. And without protection of nature, without clean air, clean water, and healthy food, we will lose our rights as people. And the groundwork is being laid to take away our constitutional rights. Go to libertystrikesback.com. Go to libertystrikesback.com to get involved, to overthrow the status quo. We know that the two parties have got to go, and it's enough is enough of this two-party ridiculousness. We've got to take our country back, and the only way to do it is to fire the Fed, go green instead, replace it with a clean, green, citizen-owned, and fully transparent credit union, so that every American has an equal ownership stake in our economy, so that we can get off of oil and out of oil wars and get into renewables and organics, and to make sure that we secure and open source our government and business. So that by declassifying, decentralizing, and open sourcing our government, that's the only way that we can make sure that we have freedom of speech in this country and that we have access to good information. If we want healthcare and a balanced budget and a number of other things, you first have to protect the environment and our rights by firing the Fed and going open source. Again, my name is Joe McHugh with Liberty Strikes Back, and I am your independent candidate for President of the United States. I look forward to serving you.